Thank you so much. Take the next slide. Okay, so for today's meeting, we do have closed captions in English and Spanish. English closed captions are available within Zoom and YouTube. Users can follow the link below to view both English and Spanish captions in a separate browser window. Next slide. How to access closed captions. So at the bottom middle of your screen, you should see a menu of options. If you can't see the menu, hover your mouse over the bottom middle of the screen. Click the square CC icon towards the right side of the menu to toggle captions on. Click the sub-menu upwards caret arrow. Haven't actually had to say that aloud before. To access more settings, including language, font color, and font size. ASL interpretation. In the effort to continue to center equity, there is an ASL interpreter in addition to closed captioning. Thank you to our ASL interpreters for today. To make sure the interpreter is always visible, please right-click their video and select Spotlight Video. For those watching on YouTube, when we screen share, you will be able to see the slideshow, closed captioning, and the ASL interpreter. You will still be able to hear different people speaking, but may not see them. There will be an opportunity to provide public input later around the meeting today, around 9:50 a.m. Please see www.interstatebridge.org/draft-SEIS for the ways to submit official public comment on the draft supplemental environmental impact statement. Verbal public comment will be welcome in the Zoom webinar during the designated time with the option to turn on your camera. Please use the link located in the meeting description on the YouTube meeting page or on the IBR CBAG meeting webpage. Commenters will not be allowed to share their screens and will be removed from the room once the public comment period concludes. To comment by phone, please dial 1-646-931-3860 or 408-638-0968. Enter the meeting ID 823-5803-3783 with passcode 385815, and then dial *9 to raise your hand. After you are invited to speak, dial *6 to unmute yourself. For our group agreements today, we want to make sure that we put relationships first, keep focused on our common goal, notice power dynamics in the room, create a space for multiple truths and norms, be kind and brave. Got some intro music during that. Practice examining racially biased systems and processes. This is a learning space for everyone, so let's look for learning. Advisory group members will turn cameras on as you share this space together. Take care of your personal needs as they come up. Let the facilitator know if you need to step away. Virtual participants can participate by taking written notes and using the raise hand and speak features for active engagement. We welcome diverse perspectives. It's okay to disagree. Remember to move up, and remember to assume and have good intentions. Okay, next slide. All right, and I'm going to turn it over to Program Administrator Greg Johnson to welcome us.
All right, good morning, everyone. Well, first off, thank you for being here. We are still a team on a mission. So thanks everybody for your participation, and I look forward to some of our accomplishments today. Thank you.
Great. Mayor Ann?
Good morning, everyone. Sorry you're missing the blueberry pecan buckle this morning. It was nice and warm. We're so excited that we're moving forward with this. We only have about 10 months to go for that record of decision on September 8th, 2025. So we're looking forward to all of the discussions. Thank you so very much.
Let me write that date down.
October 8th. September 8th.
And then followed by City of Portland Deputy City Administrator Priya Donafal.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you, Administrator Johnson and Mayor Ann. and members of the Community Benefits Advisory Group. I'm honored to represent Commissioner Mouse today. I think the process.
I'm sorry, the interpreters can't hear.
I'm honored to represent Commissioner Mouse, the City of Portland today, and this process is especially crucial as we navigate significant changes like the charter change for City of Portland, new local and regional administration leadership changes, and the transition to federal administrations. Community-based work like this provides essential direction for the future, and I appreciate everybody's thoughtful input and look forward to working together to advance these important actions.
Well, thank you so much. We're now going to go through introductions. So I'm going to lead us through introductions for in-person, and then my co-facilitator, Emily, will lead us through for the virtual folks. So for introductions today, please introduce your name, organizational affiliation, or at-large status, and pronouns. And our check-in question today is, what's the last thing you recommended to someone? Take some time. It's a good question today. Vicki, would you like to start? Not to put you on the spot.
You can say no.
I have no recommendations.
I think start with the recommendation. I think I was so tired of saying vote to everybody I ran into that stuck in my mind. I'm Vicki Nakashima, and I'm a member of the Equity Advisory Committee. I live in East Vancouver. I'm happy to be here. I use she, her pronouns. And I wanted to make sure I came to the right place. For some reason, I didn't double check if it was the Portland building or this building. And I was hoping coming up the ramp. I was in the right place.
Carly Francis, Washington State DOT, she, her pronouns. I really can't remember, but I did really like Crying in H Mart. If anybody's read that, which is a lovely book. So that's, I think I've said it to people at some point. I don't remember the last thing I recommended, but that's a thing I recommend. But if it's close to, if you are in a space where a family has recently passed away, it might not be the thing for you. So, because it's definitely a memoir about dying. So, but it's lovely.
Janie Haygood, she, her pronouns, chair of the Vancouver Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission. I think the last thing I recommended was telling a friend to go check out Three Howls, which is a restaurant, plant-based restaurant in Vancouver. It's wonderful, so highly recommend.
Farley Winters with LSW Architects and a resident of the Arnada neighborhood. My pronouns are she, her. And probably something food related as well. I just went to Pine Street Market in Portland for the first time and went to Thai Peacock, and it was excellent. Some of the best pad see ew I've ever had.
Porky Collier with Columbia Corridor Association, and normally my recommendation is don't take my recommendation. But last night, we were just talking about this last night, I was recommending to my son to do his extra credit on his homework, and that's deeper than it sounds.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Aiden Gronauer, they, them, or he, him pronouns, Assistant Director of Civil Rights and Equity for the program. Last piece of advice I gave to somebody is a piece of advice I need to remind myself. Just breathe.
Hello, everybody. Priya Dhanapal, representing City of Portland as the Deputy City Administrator, she, her pronouns, and kind of similar to you, I'm blessed to have passionate and really capable staff, as similar to all of you here. So I reminded everybody to make sure they balance their work and life.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Brenda Martin. I'm the new IBR project manager for the City of Portland. I've been in the City of Portland for almost 3 weeks now, so I'm very excited to be here. I use she, her pronouns. And I am a sewist, and I have learned how to make garment clothes. So I did recommend that someone who wanted to learn how to sew take classes. So highly recommend looking at your fabric stores in town. Many of them offer really great beginning sewing courses.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Greg Johnson, IDR Program Administrator. I read a lot, and so I recommend books to folks. So the book that I read in the last year and a half, I still recommend highly, is The Great Bridge. It's about the building of the Brooklyn Bridge. I read it way back when, but I reread it, and it is a inspiring, great story. If you'd like to read about infrastructure.
Good morning, Ann McInerney, Ogle Mayor for the City of Vancouver, she, her pronouns. Mine is not sexy at all. I recommended that Terry go to Grover's this morning to get the red rubber gasket for the toilets.
I'll just be diplomatic. Well, okay, so truthfully, my most recent recommendation was to drop a certain social media platform. I'll leave it at that. But my more diplomatic answer is to submit comments on the draft SEIS.
Holly Williams, she, her, Vancouver community member. I have a new refugee friend, and recently I recommended to her, don't burn your bridges. And since we're talking about bridges, there you go.
One of the first things somebody said to me when I moved here was, don't burn bridges in Bridgetown. That's good advice. Shannon Singleton, my pronouns are she and her, and I lead the community benefits work here. My last recommendation was about basketball. We were watching NBA, and I'm a huge Charles Barkley fan, and he's got a great book, my favorite name ever. It's titled, I Might Be Wrong, but I Doubt It. So I recommended that.
My name is Brady Galello. My pronouns are she, hers, and I'm on the community benefits team for IBR. And the last recommendation I gave somebody, it was probably music related, knowing me. And so I will say, if you're up in Seattle, there is a really cool new nonprofit jazz venue that you can go to. So if that's something you're into, it is in downtown Seattle, and it's only $20 a show, which is pretty cool. So highly recommend that. It's called the Seattle Jazz Fellowship. Moving to our virtual folks. Emily, please take us through. Thank you.
All right, well, thanks so much, everyone. If I could please ask my CBAG members here virtually to raise your hand to make it a little easier to call on everybody, and then I'll get us started in the meantime. So I'm Emily Thomas Peralta. I am part of the CBAG team for IBR. I use she, her, aya pronouns. And the last recommendation I gave was actually not too long before this meeting. I was telling my friend to try using Audible for audiobooks, because I love reading, but I had to do so much of it in grad school. I do so much of it at work that I just find myself not able to make myself do it. So Audible was clutch, and I think I got through like 12 or 15 books last year. So highly recommend that. And I will turn it to Michael and then Peter.
Hello, everyone. Michael Strauss, he, him pronouns. Run development for the Western U.S. for Kimco Realty. We're the owner of the Jensen Beach Center, and representing our small businesses in the Jensen Beach Center, as well as lots of small businesses and medium-sized and large businesses on Hayden Island. Last recommendation is probably along the lines of Adrian's Just Breathe, but I like to say from like Dory from Nemo, just keep swimming.
Thanks, Michael. We'll go to Peter and then Nate.
Good morning, everybody. Peter Fells, he, him pronouns. I represent ACE, Alliance for Community Engagement, which is a coalition of environmental groups in Southwest Washington. Just yesterday, I recommended a book called Skies of Thunder, which is about the World War II pilots and planes that flew over the hump from India to China. I recommended it to my brother because our father was one of those pilots, and he never talked about it. So we get to read a little bit about what he went through.
Very cool. Thanks, Peter. Let's go to Nate and then Walter.
Good morning, everybody. Nate McCoy, President and CEO of NAMAC Oregon. First and foremost, I want to say congrats to Shannon in the audience, all of our newly elected folks for government positions, a lot of new friends and some old friends in some of these posts. So glad to see that the dust is settled. The recommendations I've made, and I'll stay with the politics, is me and my young son talk about politics all the time. And when Trump got newly elected, he got worried. And I said, son, you have to remember, politics is local. You cannot make an imprint nationally until you make an imprint locally. So don't worry about the headlines nationally, worry about what's happening in Portland. And to the point about burning bridges, I love it because NAMAC's motto is building bridges, breaking barriers. So let's get this stuff done because we're about to build a big bridge. Good to be with everybody today.
Thank you, Nate. We'll go to Walter and then Shabana.
Hi, Walter Valenta, 40 Mile Loop in Bridgeton neighborhood. And not to sound trite, but my last recommendations have been get your comments in, all the groups I'm part of by midnight on Mondays. And now's the time.
Thanks, Walter. Shabana and then Scott.
I think the last recommendations I gave to anybody were to vote. And also there's a movie called Past Lives that came out in 2023. It's a beautiful story, heartbreaking and so beautiful about love. It's a cultural story about a couple of young people from Korea. And it's just, yeah, it's one of the most beautiful love stories I've ever watched. So called Past Lives if you're a movie buff.
Thank you. And we'll go to Scott and then Ryan.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Scott McCollum. I apologize for keeping my camera off. I'm homesick today, and you don't want to see me sitting here in my bed. Let's see. Pronouns are he, him. Besides recommending to vote, I think my last real recommendation was to my board of directors at the School for the Blind to read The Anxious Generation. We're one of those school districts that has our students lock away their cell phones. And that's a good book as to why we do that. But I also wanted to bring up, I was just reading a book by one of our graduates at the School for the Blind. His name is Emil Fries, and he started at the School for the Blind in 1917. And in that book, it's very interesting because he talks about all of the students at the School for the Blind in 1917 walking all the way from the School for the Blind to the Interstate Bridge because it was just opening and they all went to celebrate that. And it's a really cool story. So I know our School for the Blind folks were involved when that was first erected, and I hope that we can be there this next time. So have a great day.
Thank you, Scott. And we'll turn it to Ryan.
I'm Ryan Winsheimer. I'm with the Oregon Department of Transportation. I do recommend like a lot of great things. And I heard Audible, like love that one. But the question was, what's the last thing I recommended? And my truthful answer to that is habanero ketchup. So I don't know if you guys know, but Heinz now makes a habanero ketchup. So it's got spice in your ketchup already done. So you don't have to add Tabasco or whatever else you normally add to your spicy dish. So if you use ketchup on hash browns or whatever it might be, habanero ketchup, you should give it a shot.
Love that. Thanks, Ryan. And I'll turn it back over to you, Brie.
Awesome, thank you. So many good recommendations. All right, can I get the slides back, please? So we're gonna run through our agenda for today. So of course, we've already gone through our call to order, welcome introductions, and meeting overview and outcomes. We're now gonna move into the public comment portion of our agenda. And then followed by that, we'll have a program update from Administrator Johnson. And then we're going to confirm our potential benefits recommendations from the avoid further harm and mobility and accessibility categories. And time permitting, then go through reviewing and refining potential benefits in the mobility and accessibility and physical design categories, followed by our closing and next steps. We're now going to move into the public comment portion of our meeting. Amanda, do we have any commenters today?
There are no public comments at the time.
Okay, great. Thank you, Amanda. All right, then we are going to move on to, oh, I apologize. I'm still need to review the instructions. For our comment instructions for today, so to make a verbal comment, to make a live comment via phone, please dial 1-646-931-3860 or 1-408-638-0968. The meeting ID is 823-5803-3783, and the passcode is 385815. You're going to dial *9 to raise your hand. The facilitator will call on participants to provide comment. You'll then dial *6 to unmute yourself. provide your name and affiliation, and then our 10-minute time frame will be divided among the number of requested speakers. If we've run out of time and you have not had a chance to speak, you can still provide comments after the meeting.
And I apologize, Bree, it looks like we have a hand here. Guy?
Yeah, good morning, committee. My name is Guy Ben. I'm the program manager for Transit-Oriented Development at TriMet. And I'm new to listening into this group, but what I did want to just, I was looking at the agenda for this meeting and future meetings, was just to volunteer our group's expertise as it relates towards transit-oriented development. And as you start looking at phase 3 and physical design, that and how that can bring community benefit. And really just to highlight that from certainly sort of the perspective at TriMet and transit-oriented development, that is can obviously be a significant community benefit from large-scale infrastructure projects such as this one.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other public commenters at this time?
Not at this time.
Thank you, Amanda. Appreciate it. All right, we're now going to move to Administrator Johnson for the IBR program update. Oh, I apologize. I missed another slide that was back to public comment. Thank you all for bearing with me. For CBAG comment instructions, please see www.interstatebridge.org/draft SEIS for the ways to submit official public comment on the draft supplemental environmental impact statement. To submit advisory group comments after the meeting, fill out the comment form on the program website or email your comments to info@interstatebridge.org with CBAG public comment in the subject line. You can call 360-859-0494 for Washington, 503-897-2918 for Oregon, or 888-503-6735 toll free, and state CBAG public comment in your message. Written comments need to explicitly say CBAG public comment in the subject line or in the body of the message for them to be identified and distributed to CBAG members. All written comments must be received prior to 48 hours in advance of each upcoming meeting in order to be distributed to advisory group members. Comments received after that point will be distributed to members in advance of their next meeting. And now the program update with Administrator Johnson. Thank you all for bearing with me.
No problem. Thank you, everybody. So I have a couple of off-the-cuff comments that I'd like to make to this group. First off, I want to thank Shannon Singleton. Shannon has been just absolutely passionate and grinding away for this committee. And this is sometimes a tough group to wrangle and get everything going, but Shannon, you did an expert job of it, and we will miss you. Hopefully we have you for a couple more meetings so you officially take off. This is the last? Yeah. Well, once again.
Unfortunately, special election, so I start December 3rd.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, as for those of you who don't know, Shannon is the newest Multnomah County Commissioner, and we look forward to the good things that you're going to do on that body. So thank you for your service to this team and to this group. So let's talk about what's a good term, the elephant in the room. We had an election just recently, and things are going to change. We're going to have new leadership at USDOT. The thing I have been telling folks is that good projects are good projects no matter who's in office or who's running things. This is a great project. This is a needed project. So I tell folks, we're going to keep churning. We're going to keep doing the things that we're doing because we have been doing the right things. We are not a political entity. We build infrastructure. So infrastructure doesn't have an R or a D behind it. So just want to assure folks that we're gonna keep grinding away. We're gonna keep our foot to the pedal to get this thing started, September 8th. Yes. Now I gotta put a red circle on my calendar. But, so, you know, folks who are happy or disappointed, with what happened, you know, a week and a half ago, I get it, but this project will continue on. This is a great project and we will continue doing the work. We're hoping to find out who the new transportation secretary will be. So as soon as we do, we will be reaching out to that person to make our case of why the continued funding of this program is essential to not only the local, the regional, but the national economy. So we have a good case to be made. So with that said, we have been busy. We're still taking public comment. The public comment period, as someone observed, ends next Monday night at midnight. So if you're writing at 11:59, be sure to press the button before midnight. So far, we have 1,700 comments that have come into the program. And it is less than we anticipate, but we anticipate a rush towards the end. There's a lot of folks who are doing some complex analysis and are going to give us their view. A couple misnomers that I want to address while I have the floor. Folks have said that we have not looked at induced demand on this program. That is not true. Our team has looked at induced demand. And that has been taken into account with everything we've been doing. So, and folks who still say we haven't looked at a tunnel, we've looked at a tunnel. A tunnel doesn't work. So, we still encourage, if you have comments, no matter if you love it, you hate it, get your comments in. We appreciate it. But we also have a second comment period for Section 106. So know that that also ends on November 18th. And so Section 106 is the impact on historical and archaeological cultural resources here in the region. So please go to our website, understand what that document is about, and if you have concerns, please comment on it. We held virtual public hearings. Our last one was October 30th. We held in-person public hearings. So we had one here in Vancouver that we had over 120 folks show up. It was an open house / public hearing. Very good comments, a lot of energy in the room. 2 days later, we held a public hearing at the Expo Center in Portland. We had approximately 70 folks show up. And once again, good energy in the room, good questions. A lot of folks from Hayden Island did come and express their hopes and concerns. So it was, both events were very good. The virtual public hearings, the first one was not well attended, but the second one, we got some good comments, and we had a court reporter to record those comments. So we're trying our best to make sure everyone has their voice heard. We're still out in the community doing things. So if you know some events where you need us, even after this public comment period, where you need our team to come and speak to a group, let us know. We will make it happen. So if we go to the next slide, the Vancouver Farmers Market is one of my favorite events, and the mayor and I did a tag team there back this summer, and it was fantastically fun. But we're doing presentations all over the place. And yesterday we hosted one of the Metro, we invited 2 of the Metro counselors to come and tour the program area. One became sick with COVID, and so we only had one, but it was just a great conversation. Great support from that counselor on the things that we're doing. He asked us the tough questions about the health impact assessment that is that we're engaged in. He asked about small and minority businesses and how they will be involved in this contract. So we had great conversations. So once again, I'm not going to read this entire list, but if you have groups that you want us to appear in front of, please let us know. And the public comment period does not stop us from doing all of these presentations and community events. So with that, I think I do have more slides. I should read this stuff before the meeting. I was watching the Lions game. So if you're still interested in seeing the draft supplemental document, it's still available. Yeah, it's here in this building with a physical copy. Once again, wherever we have it, we adhere to ADA standards. We have an online search function for folks who want to look up a specific issue on the document. The executive summary is interpreted into multiple languages, so folks who don't have English as a primary language can have access to the document in their native language. So once again, you can go to our website to see executive summary and technical reports at interstatebridge.org, draft SEIS. Hard copies, once again, in our office, Vancouver City Hall, thank you, Mayor, Vancouver Community Library, the Charles Jordan Community Center, and the Portland Building. Thank you, City of Portland. The virtual public hearings, all those things are done. So we talked about that. So let's go to the next slide. If you, once again, you still want to provide public comment, Monday night is it. So as you're watching Monday Night Football, get your comments ready and send them in to us. So web-based form, you can email us at interstatebridge.org. You can send a comment to our office through regular mail. You can call our office at 866-IBR-SEIS, which is 427-7347. And once again, the comments at the virtual public hearings are done, so can't do that. But once again, you can provide your comments in your native language, and we will interpret those and make those a part of the public record. So last slide is we do want to hear from you. Even though we're less than a week out, we're expecting folks to still be commenting up to that last day. So what are these comments going to do? It's going to help us shape our recommendations to the executive steering group of what we bring forward for the final supplemental document. It's going to help shape technical analysis and things that we need to explore more in this final supplemental document. So I'm not going to read through all of this, but please comment, and if you submit attachments, they must be transcribed or submitted via the draft supplemental voicemail line. So we want you to comment, please. And with that, Bria, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Great, thank you so much. All right, so we are now going to go through confirming the potential benefits recommendations from the avoid further harm and mobility and accessibility categories. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Emily Thomas-Prata, to take us through that conversation.
Great. Thanks so much. I'm excited to get to main event here for today. And so just a little bit of framing before we go through this. As we know, we've gone through a couple of sessions now of review refine with all of you. We've taken your input. We've worked with our technical teams to really, get this language to a place where we all feel comfortable with it. And we have also taken input from our community advisory group and our equity advisory group. And so I want to share a little bit of high level feedback that we received from both of those groups. And essentially for the community advisory group, we shared this this tranche 2 with them and asked them if it aligns with their community values that they've established. The feedback that we got was yes. So folks feel good about where we're at. And then similarly with the equity advisory group, we asked them if these recommendations that you all have been working on are in alignment with the equity objectives that they have established through the equity framework. Similarly, they said that they were, and they gave us a lot of great thoughts around how we start thinking about outcomes from these different benefits. So we'll discuss that at a later point, but just wanted to share that feedback that we got from those groups and let you know that we've been doing that feedback loop to ensure that we get the input from all the different folks we want to make sure are able to. And so for a little procedural piece here, how this will work is we have split tranche 2 into 2 chunks here. And so we'll hold 2 modified consensus decision-making votes for each. So the first we'll go through is the avoid further harm recommendations that are in tranche 2, and then we'll do our decision making, and then we'll do those for mobility and accessibility. And so we're not going to vote on every single recommendation, but rather we're going to do it in 2 batches. And so with that, Fabian, could you please pull up our chart here for tranche 2? And in the meantime, I'll just let folks know what I will be doing is I will read through the list here. So we'll go read through one by one. I'll give some notes here about what pieces of the language have changed based on the discussion and the input that we have received from all of you. And I'll go through each one, and then at the end, we will go over our modified consensus decision-making instructions, and Shannon will take us through that process. And so with that, I will get us started. So starting with avoid further harm 13, it is have collaborative conversations with landowners and consulting tribes to maintain access to the river for Native communities throughout construction, with the focus on Native communities defining what access means to them. And so as a note of some updates here, we added the language to include collaborative conversations, as well as the last piece around communities defining what access means to them based on some of the discussion and input that we heard from all of you. The next, number 14, develop a proactive communication plan for before.
Hang on, Emily. Are we going to discuss each one as we go through or wait to the end?
No, we're gonna wait till the end, so she'll go through them and then we'll open up for any comments before voting. Yeah. Go ahead, Emily.
Thank you. Okay, number 14, develop a proactive communication plan for before and during construction to keep the public informed of potential impacts such as noise, route closures, or other mobility impacts, etc., to include communication for transit or mobility impacts as soon as possible, as well as messaging to homeless service providers. Establish a comprehensive process for community members to voice concerns and report negative impacts, potentially including an online platform and/or hotline where members can report issues and receive timely responses, ensuring a commitment to responsiveness and due diligence to reach resolution. Consider exploring the use of AI. So for this, we added in proactive communication based on feedback we got. We also combined this with another recommendation since these 2 were really related to each other. We added the mention of transit and mobility impacts as soon as possible. We added comprehensive process, and then we added the piece around ensuring responsiveness and due diligence since we heard that there is a desire to make sure that there's follow through on any issues that are raised. Number 15, Increase public transit services and explore alternative routes to mitigate transportation impacts to transit riders, walkers, bikers, rollers, and people using mobility scooters, and apologies for the typo there, during construction, including the implementation of shuttle buses and additional bus routes along the impacted routes in the cities of Vancouver and Portland. So for this, based on your feedback, we added in the call out for all the different modes of transportation, and we added in the specific mention of the cities of Vancouver and Portland. And Fabian, if you could scroll down just a little bit. For number 17, explore opportunities for planting mature trees as soon as possible with considerations for noise mitigation and air quality in line with landscaping plans and permitting. And so for this, we added language to specify that it would be, oh, apologies here. We added in as early as possible, and we added in the considerations for noise mitigation and air quality based on your feedback. For number 18, in line with existing procurement policies, ensure there are opportunities for representation of equity priority communities in the RFP review process and on the review panel to avoid and address potential biases. And so for this, we added in language to specify that it would be part of the review process and panel so that we could make sure that there was clarity that was getting at what folks were really wanting to see from this recommendation. Next, number 19, and Fabian, could you please scroll down a little? Thank you. The real estate process, including eminent domain, which is a last resort, and outreach must include considerations for language access and culturally specific and relevant services. There was no language changes based on our last discussion to this one. For the next, one that you will, a note for this is that this, the identify funds for direct impact mitigations resulting from construction, that was its own recommendation. However, based on the discussion we had, we felt that this really was speaking to a broader subject and felt like it could be turned into a heading where there were other recommendations that were very related. And so that's the adjustment that we made. And so number 20 reads, require contractors to perform foundation inspections and videos on specific properties as defined by each specific work activity prior to construction to establish baseline conditions for determining whether any subsequent impacts are caused by IBR construction. And on a note here, we added in as defined by each specific work activity to further add clarity. Please scroll down. Yes, a little. So, okay, so these two at the top, these number 21 and 22 are still under that category or under that heading of the direct impact mitigations. And so 21 reads, develop comprehensive strategies and funding options with the program and other partners that can be implemented to address the relocation and housing needs of people experiencing unsheltered homelessness affected by the program. Explore partnerships and funding options with agencies providing culturally specific services, focus on equity priority communities, and those who conduct street outreach and engagement for housing placement. And the second piece here was added in as based on the discussion that folks had around wanting to ensure there was really a focus on the culturally specific services as well as the proactive outreach. And then finally, number 22, minimize impacts on small businesses during construction to avoid extended closures. And there were no language edits to that based on our last discussion. And so with that, I will turn it over to Shannon to please take us through our setup and our instructions for a modified consensus and then our discussion. And Fabian, if you could please pull up the slide with the modified consensus.
Hang on one second on the slide. Emily, we've got a couple of questions, I think, or comments. And first, before we jump to that, could you please just walk people through a little bit? There's a little confusion about tranche 2 and 3 because we didn't finish tranche 2 in one meeting. We did some in a second meeting. So can you just describe that a little bit for folks, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Shannon. So in September and October, that's where we went through tranche 2. So it was the first and second half since we weren't able to get through all of it in a meeting. And so that is what we are doing our decision making around today. And then those have been batched into tranche 2 because they were ones that could potentially have an impact or be included as part of the final environmental impact study. And so we wanted to make sure we were able to get that to our teams in time to do any analysis or inclusion that might need to happen after decisions or after the recommendations are made. And so that's the handout in front of you for tranche 2. For tranche 3, that is our next batch that we will be doing review refine of. And so we haven't gone through all of that yet. If there's time after we finish voting today, that's what we'll dig into next.
I think one thing that could be helpful is on the sort of the main list that has all of the recommendations on it would be just to simply define this group is tranche 2, this group is tranche 3, this group is tranche 4, so, you know, just for clarity. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Mary Ann, did you have, and I just want to open space. We don't want to spend a ton of time. We're definitely not going to wordsmith. I know that's our tendency and we'd love to do that. But any feedback or comments before we move into the voting, we'd like to spend some time on. So Mary Ann, I know you had one, at least on the first one, so we'll go.
Well, it actually goes to number 20 because we just said perform foundation inspections. There's, I'm not sure that it was just foundations. And we have a number of buildings that are brick and chimneys and windows and everything else. Is there something that you would suggest that says not just the foundation, but the brick wall, the chimney?
How about structural?
Thank you, that's structural. Structural will do it for me, thank you so much.
Any other comments in the room or online? Fabian, could you bring up the slides? Thank you. So we will move through, a couple people are both in person and online, so I'm gonna ask if you're in person, don't do your fist of 5 online so that we get an accurate count. And essentially, just as a reminder, we start at FIST, which is no way, I don't support this, hold on, I'd like to talk about it more. R2 is I have reservations, but I could be convinced. 3, I guess I'm okay. 4 is sounds good. 5 is I love it. And if you are a FIST, a 1, or a 2, and you have particular things that you want to state and make sure that we capture in this decision making, that will be how we forward it on to leadership. So it doesn't mean that you would block these recommendations moving forward if the rest of folks are voting 3 and up. However, we do want to capture where you have concerns or reservations and include that in the record that goes on to leadership as they make their decisions. Any questions before we move into that?
You're doing this line by line?
No, we're doing them as a category.
As a category.
Mm-hmm. Which I know it's going the way back time machine to January and February. We'll do them in categories like that. All right. So with the one edit of adding in structures as opposed to foundations regarding structural regarding instead of foundation for inspections, how do folks vote on this category of avoid further harm, community benefits? So go ahead and keep your hands up for us. Priya, you get a vote. Okay, sorry, hang on folks. Go ahead, Vicky has a question.
Well, on 13, are there some treaty rights with tribes on the Columbia that require state tribal agreements in addition to collaborative discussions? That doesn't.
I think the other thing that's interesting on 1 is, or on 13, is that maintain access kind of, I think we had this conversation earlier in this group, that there is not right now likely in the footprint of the bridge project itself existing tribal access to the river. I think Mayor Ann, you were talking about there is
tribal access through a City of Vancouver property, but it's not right here. And so this idea of maintain is sort of, to me, I would interpret this, if I had this to work on later, as pretty generic and making sure that what we were doing here wasn't impacting something that's over here for access, as opposed to like providing access underneath active construction or in the active construction footprint. And so I think there's also that interesting, like I think it's relevant, but it's more abstract to the construction body of work is how I see this. So just maybe stating that out loud in case that's not everyone's understanding. Because I think then that sort of separates out some of this, the treaty space, because it's a little bit separate and apart from to some degree.
Steve?
You're on mute.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, treaty rights. This is a sensitive issue, and I'm just gonna, for the cultural part of this, bring up that treaty rights have nothing to do with native rights in this area, that our tribe is a treaty-free tribe and that we have never signed off anything as far as giving up any of our rights. And I just want to make that moment, take a moment to say the treaties would just be additional stuff that you might have to do for a specific tribe. But if you're going to do that for one tribe, you need to do that for all tribes, whether or not we walked away from the treaty proceedings or not. We are all still recognized tribes in this area.
Thank you, Steve. Anything else? All right. So I think what I will say here is that what happens with this recommendation is it moves into the program. So this gives our tribal liaison some language to work with and understand how to work with the consulting parties as well, and kind of flesh this out more on what it needs to look like. And I think to Carly's point of there's not maybe current access in, so there isn't anything to maintain. But if there is, as they're doing their work, that continues to be something you all are recommending the program continue to consider as they move the work forward. Okay, so I'm gonna come back to asking for folks on FISTA 5. If you are one of my CBAG members online and you're able to turn on your camera for this, that would be great. Scott, I'm gonna go ahead and have you just say yours out loud when we get there, because I don't want you to feel like you have to turn your camera on. So for those who, with the caveat around changing to structural and not just foundations, our FISTA 5 vote on the avoid further harm category of benefits that we just reviewed this morning. And if folks can go ahead and vote.
I'm gonna ask that folks keep their hands up too, because I'm gonna record as quickly as I can.
Scott is a 4.
Thank you, Scott.
Is that a, so sorry, thank you. Appreciate you.
All right. Thank you all. So Emily, I will turn this back over to you just in one moment to move into the next section. So as a reminder, once you all make these recommendations, we take these, we continue to work with the technical teams and look at any potential funding mechanisms, all of the other categories that are on your big spreadsheet. But then we also will bring them to ESG. So we'll bring them into ESG in their next meeting and have some conversation with them, and then they'll get formally moved into the program. So Emily, I'll hand it to you to move through our next section.
Great, thank you so much. Fabian, if we could please pull the chart back up. All right, and if we could zoom, if that's possible. Great. All right, and just a reminder that folks, you've got it on your handout as well. So if you have that handy, recommend you take a look at that too. Okay, so starting in mobility and accessibility with number 11, it reads, conduct a comparative analysis of program areas to optimize traffic flow and accessibility. There were no language edits since our last meeting based on our discussion. Number 12, design team to consider providing adequate shelter for all weather conditions at transit stations, including rain, wind, and heat. Special consideration should be made for the unique needs of the elevated transit station. And so here, based on our discussion we had, we added in the specificity of the different weather conditions. Then we also added in the second line about the elevated transit station, since we understood that that was a particular focus for folks and that there are unique needs that need to be addressed there. Number 13, consider safety when determining locations for public restrooms near transit stations. And so here we didn't make changes to the language, but just want to note that given that there was a discussion about, who would potentially be responsible for the bathrooms and that needing to get determined, some may be public and others are, by TriMet or only for the transit drivers, then this language will be intended as guidance for whoever's responsible for that these considerations are made in those decisions. For number 14, design team to consider incorporation of drought-resistant naturalized landscaping at public transit locations. For this, we adjusted the language from green spaces to landscaping to be more specific, and then we added in the specificity around the type of landscaping, so the drought-resistant and the naturalized plants based on the feedback you all gave. Number 15, consider maintenance, safety, active management, and future proofing in the design aspects of the multi-use paths throughout the program area. For this, we added in future proofing based on the discussion that we had. Next, develop robust trail systems that surpass federal requirements, leveraging creative solutions to increase functionality and community value and responsive to the community's needs and input. There were no changes to the language here. Incorporate innovative solutions to exceed ADA requirements, enhancing accessibility and mobility thoughtfully. Similarly, no changes to the language here. And then finally, number 27, expand the bridge's bike and pedestrian paths and install barriers to separate them from vehicular traffic, enhancing both safety and noise reduction. And again, no language changes to this based on our discussion.
So we have some comments or questions in the room, and then we'll go to online as well. Holly, go ahead.
Don't think number 27, we really had a whole lot of time to talk about it last time. So I'm wondering if it's possible, and I think the same was with number 20, if it's possible to review those or not.
Emily?
I think that part of why we had felt comfortable in moving through those quickly was because we had had a pretty robust conversation about some of the others that spoke about some of that, the considerations for safety, that physical separation for the bike paths, and for the multimodal transit on those. So I think that was part of our feeling that we could move through those more quickly, but Shannon, I'll defer to you on whether, how we kind of go about that.
Okay, I'm not sure, is your comment related?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So similarly on 20, with respect to, so if we can have specific reference to accessibility of the main span of the bridge for the height and ensuring this ADA compliance, would be like elevators or ramps would be great. I don't see a specific reference in there. So that's the comment I have on 20.
Yes.
So just similar, I have another comment on 11 that I can wait if you want to discuss 20 first.
Yes, thank you. Let's hold on 11. Emily, did you get that?
Yeah, and specifically for the elevator, I heard that piece, and we do have, I believe we have one in an upcoming, and I think think it might be tranche 3, we do have a specific mention about an elevator in that. And I do have, some general context that we gave around the ADA standards that I can share, in that the technical team shared that on the project, the goal is to surpass ADA standards and guidelines and account for the unique circumstances, such as navigating bridge structures and the interchanges of station areas. And so in some places, this will translate into longer ramps with more gradual grades, rest areas, wider facilities. So all of these pieces are definitely being considered as part of the design.
I think you've got a couple of hands online that might be related.
Yes, Peter?
Yeah, thanks. Excuse me. I tried to visualize what the bike path looked like, and frankly, I found it really difficult to do. For the cars, vehicles, I liked the flyover videos that are online and in the public workshop. And so my suggestion is, I know it's kind of late, but I would sure like to see if we could do the equivalent for the bike and pedestrian paths. For example, I have a hard time visualizing the difference between putting those paths on one level or having a 2-level bridge. But if we could see visually, what is this going to look like? That would help people say which they prefer. Similarly, with some of the intersections that cyclists and pedestrians are going to come into with the new bridge, you can't really tell from the materials that have been provided what those are like. And I would just really encourage, since there is probably still some time to make minor changes in those paths, I would encourage trying to do some sort of visual flyover like thing that would say, okay, if you're starting on a bicycle from such and such a point at point A and you want to get to point B, how that's going to look. In addition, if that can be done after the bridge is constructed, that would be helpful for people using those paths. They can see ahead of time if they want to plan a route, where those routes are going to go. So that's my suggestion.
And Shannon, if it's helpful, I can also provide some of the contextual notes we had for this one in our discussion last meeting that may help a little bit of that. So the physical separation from traffic for these paths is included in the modified LPA. And bike and pedestrian paths are planned to be expanded over the current widths. And to prevent conflicts with path users that may be traveling at varying speeds, the shared use path would provide separate spaces for people walking and biking. The design elements of the path would buffer it from vehicle traffic, noise, and exposure to street debris and stormwater to provide a well-lit, attractive, and comfortable environment for all users. And the tech team is also continuing to do research on options for noise reduction.
So I've got a couple of folks in the room. I'm gonna go Janie, then Farley.
So I just know at our last meeting, we had talked in regards to 12, and when we brought up the discussion right now with 20, I was just reminded of ramps and the impact of ice on ramps, and I know we talked about ice during our discussion of 12, and I don't see it. I see we've added the all-weather conditions, but I do feel like ice would be a good addition into that as well, particularly with mobility and ramps.
Thank you. Carly?
Yeah, and I think my comments align with what Holly and Peter are bringing up around being really specific about when we talk about vehicular, are we talking just about cars? And when we talk about traffic flow, are we just talking about cars? Because bikes have traffic flow, pedestrians have traffic flow, and making sure that those are getting equal weight or getting weighted to a certain degree. But what Emily just shared gives me some reassurance, so feel better about that.
Mary Ann and then Holly?
On 16, you do want the city of Vancouver, right?
Let me just finish up. Are there any other comments on the one we're currently discussing, MA20?
Okay, I'm on 16.
Okay, go ahead, Mary.
Okay, 16. We have the new route from Main Street to the old apple tree that is on the plans. So I don't see City of Vancouver in here in that column. And I assume you want to put it in.
Perfect.
Okay, and so we will be responsive to that.
Priya and then Holly.
My comment is on 11. We have conduct a comparative analysis of program areas to optimize traffic flow and accessibility, and the suggestion instead of optimize traffic flow to use industry standards, use manage traffic flow using a safe system approach and improve accessibility. It's a suggestion.
Using the safe system approach and
Improve accessibility.
and improve accessibility.
I think the safe system approach is
We talked about cars or multimodal.
Hang on one second. What's the safe? Is that like a specific thing?
Yeah, I would probably need to also, let me find out if it's specific.
Okay.
But yes, that's the language that we're recommends.
Holly?
So I guess I'd like to propose a little wording change. I know we're not trying to wordsmith here, but I do think when we just refer to the multimodal path as bikes and peds, it starts to kind of narrow people's vision and viewpoint. And you know, I think as we talked briefly last time, we all know there's more to that nowadays. There's a lot of things that have wheels on them that can't go on a freeway. You know, so and you know, that's how life is now, and so we have to design according. So I think our goal here in MA 27 was to try to separate the multimodal path from the vehicular traffic at, you know, as much as possible for a variety of reasons, you know, enhancing safety, noise reduction. It could be, you know, so that's one part. I don't know if we have another, so it could just simply say install barriers to separate the multimodal path from the vehicular traffic, etc. Then there's another thing about just the width of the multimodal path. And one of the things I noticed in the draft SEIS is I think the recommendation is 10 feet and 10 feet. And I guess what comes to mind is both a pedestrian and a person who has a bicycle and an e-bike is that as a pedestrian, you actually really don't need as much space. And I think the nature of the bridge is going to be such that if it's on the under deck, it's just going to be simply loud. And I think it's going to be less likely for large groups of people to stroll a lot there. Whereas I think from a wheeled point of view, there will actually be quite a bit of usage. So you might look at something, so to say that they need, you know, I think we just want to be careful about not making assumptions like they have to be equal width, that's more designed around the mode of transportation. Does that make sense? Anyhow, I don't know.
So I think there's one that we just voted on that talks about multimodal and names a number of things. We'll pull that language in here. And make sure that it's about multimodal and that separation. I think there's something that I'm hearing you say about as design progresses and some considerations that need to happen. And I don't know that I'm capturing it. But I wonder if there's a way to talk about design team and engagement with folks who utilize multimodal paths as the design is progressing or something of that.
Oh, absolutely.
That sort of recommendation is teasing out here.
Yeah.
It feels like the idea of width allocation that's responsive to usage.
Yeah.
That makes sense in context of usage.
Yeah, because I've been in areas, you know, on paths and you know, I don't know, Greg, you right about maybe you've seen this as well, where they actually like put a line down the middle of the path and they're the same between the pedestrians and the bicyclists and you know, you get several bikes trying to pass each other in you know, 8 feet. It's like, you
Yeah.
know?
And meanwhile, it's not like I'm walking like.
Taking
up the whole space.
Yeah, just a thought.
Thank you.
I just wanted to clarify what the safe system approach is. It is a standard that City of Portland uses for the vision circle, and it's a national standard by US Department of Transportation as well for optimizing traffic flow.
Thank you.
Is it optimizing traffic flow or mitigating risk or safety?
Both, with the thought of eliminating traffic deaths and serious injuries. So there's mobility and safety also in it. So it's a holistic way of looking at optimizing traffic flow.
And we'll put a link to it. That's why I asked, because I'm like, now I can go find the link, if that's a thing.
Yeah, I Googled it as well. It's brilliant, yeah.
Well, I'm
Ryan.
not sure if we're talking about cars or what we're talking about. I think it's about the vehicular traffic primarily,
The
right?
safe system approaches for cars.
Yeah.
Is this
More
what we're talking
human
about?
centered, so it kind of focuses on the human vulnerability of safety.
And redundant systems in place to prevent.
We'll go online.
I just have my hand raised to help out the interpreter again. It's really hard to hear people who are whispering or talking in low voices. So if you could please make sure you're talking into the mic to help us all out.
Thanks, Ryan. And
where is the mic?
Well, I'm gonna say let me call on you to talk, because that will help, so that we're not hearing, because they hear a lot. If we're just having a little conversation, it's actually really loud online. And so I think if we can do that, and then I think it's just projecting. Mostly we can hear folks, but when multiple people are talking, it just turns into garble online. Okay, so I'm gonna ask for your help on this. We've got some changes. We're adding some language in MA 11 around safe systems, which I might have just made up, but I think it's close enough. With MA 12, ICE, which I know you said last time, so I apologize, we didn't capture that, but we'll get that into there as well. MA 20, MA 16, adding City of Vancouver, thank you, Marianne. MA 20, there is.
I didn't have quite as clear of, in addition to this one, other than there was.
So there was a
elevators and ramps
comment.
called out specifically.
Okay, so there was a comment about elevators, but I will say we can add something there, and it's your first one that you'll be talking about when you move into review and refine, is specifically talking about the elevator and the that accessibility component. And there was some like conversations we had around the elevator needs to be accessible for people with their bikes and other devices, that it's not just for folks who are walking.
I think that's MA 19.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where that was MA 20 regarding the
Right, but the one that has it in there is MA 19.
Yes.
Yeah. And then on 27, we had some language around multimodal, and we'll go back and list out scooters, all the things that we talked about in one of the other recommendations, and the intentionality of the separation of the barrier. And then I'm hearing kind of a second piece that is about that design team and consultation with active transit users. I'm gonna go Farley, Corky, then Carly.
Real quick, I forgot, I was gonna note for MA 14, where we talk about naturalized landscaping, I'd recommend we say native and naturalized. So there's still different things. Native is still best, naturalized is moving up from the south to the north. So we really want both of those things. They're different, but similar.
Thank you. Corky.
I guess for Priya's recommendation on MA 11, I'd love to see the wording on that. And again, I'm not as familiar with it as I'd like, but looking at the system approach online, I don't see any mention of optimizing traffic flow. So if we want to say something like optimizing traffic flow, keeping in mind safe system, something like it with consideration of that, sure, of course, yeah.
We'll put it as a sub-bullet.
Yeah, okay, all right. Want to make sure that that one is about optimizing traffic flow and accessibility.
Yeah.
So.
And we can put a sub-bullet of consider safe
Yeah.
system, yeah.
Thanks.
Awesome. Oh, sorry, Carly.
That's fine. I actually was similar, so I was reading it, because I know we've been talking about safe systems approach, which is both DOT body of work and other people's work. So this is recognizing that a whole host of folks promote safe systems. It is not about optimizing traffic flow, so that's definitely not part of it. It is about balancing and modifying speeds, recognizing that speeds kill people. And so it is really trying to be a balanced approach. So to note and be clear after I read it again, because I needed to do my homework briefly, not about optimizing.
Anything else online? Okay. So with the final reading that I just gave and the additional caveat of that being a sub-bullet on MA 11, how do folks vote on FISTA 5 for this category of community benefit recommendations? So if folks can go ahead and vote, and sorry to ask to keep your hands up for a moment. Okay. Thank you.
I'm gonna ask folks to make it really high up and really clear. Thank you. Appreciate everybody's patience.
Scott is a 4.
Thank you, Scott.
Janie, that's a 3. Thank you.
And Walter, apologies, but I can't quite see what your vote is. Oh, okay.
I had to go take care of something, so
Thank you.
I don't know what we're voting on. I was gone for the last few minutes, so.
Good online too.
You can put your hands down.
Thank
Sorry,
you all.
Do you
Bobby
want
said
to take a minute and catch Walter up since he knows what we're voting on? Okay.
I think that just so folks are aware, part of why we ask is, again, it goes, you have had some recommendations that everybody's a 5 or just one person doesn't support. So we do share that tally. So again, leadership is able to make an informed decision about where folks sat on this group. So I want to acknowledge we had a lot more 3s than we've had in the past. That's completely okay. I think it gives the program enough to work with to understand how to start moving forward and implement. And I think the design team kind of consultation piece will help you all get into some more details as design progresses. Peter.
Yeah, I just want to say I was a 3. I'm not convinced because I can't visualize what these paths are going to look like. So I want to repeat what I said before. It would help if we could see really what they're going to look like.
Thank you, Peter. And we'll absolutely write that into the recommendations that move forward, is that note. All right, thank you all. I know FISTA 5 is new for a lot of folks and we don't use it a lot, so I just appreciate everyone being willing to move through modified consensus in this process. And I'll hand it back to you, Emily.
Great, thanks so much. Fabian, if we could please pull up our chart for tranche 3 and we will get rocking on our next batch here. All right, and so I ask folks if you have your handouts handy, if you could switch over to our tranche 3 handout. That's what we'll be working through right now. And so this will be like our other review refine sessions. We're going to go through each one, open it up for discussion. And I think having just gone through this decision-making exercise, I think that's actually great for moving into now review refine and thinking about what are the things that are going to come up for you. If you needed to vote on this, what would be pieces that maybe you want to see more clarity or you want to see a little bit more iteration of the language. So have that in mind as we're discussing these. So we will start with number 19, which is explore creative solutions to ensure accessibility in the tight space from Terminal 1 to the trail, potentially including an elevator. And so I have some notes here from our technical teams and our analysis. We understand that this part for Terminal 1 is referring to the waterfront area and the connection to the bridge and the elevated station. And so some notes there is that there will be an ADA compliant ramp. The program is exploring various design options for what that will potentially look like. And some thoughts that I had here for the group to consider is whether we want to maybe modify the language from Terminal 1 to the waterfront or something explicitly mentioning that elevated station, just so that it's really clear what we're talking about here. And with that, I will turn it over, or Bree and I will work through our discussion here. So Bree will help me in the room and I'll work with our online folks if anyone has any thoughts.
Thank you, Emily. Before we get started, just want to remind folks to please remember for our in-person, project, put that placard up. I know we're going to have a lot of great discussion. All right, starting first, we have a comment from Holly, and then we'll move virtually to Peter.
So as I talk to folks about the bridge, you know, when you get beyond people going like, well, you know, why isn't it, you know, why aren't we doing a third bridge or that kind of stuff, right? You know, this is probably the area where people are most interested, I would say, or just concerned maybe, because I think somewhere in the language, we need to acknowledge that the bridge is very high up in the air. And that's fine, that's not gonna change. I mean, that's just what it is, right? So, and that users of the multimodal route are gonna have to get, call it 80 feet up. And so I think I'd like to see some sort of language that acknowledges that you know, it's a tight space to go up a fair amount of, that's a lot of stairs to hook up. And so, and you know, with the goal of encouraging people to use other forms of transportation besides vehicles, something to that effect. This is an issue on the Hayden Island side as well.
We're going to move to Peter, and then we'll go back to the room to Mary Ann.
Okay, thanks. I just want to say I've heard a lot of comment from the bike communities in favor of an elevator. It's just that even if a ramp is ADA compliant, it's a long, it would have to be a very long, slow climb. Or if it's a spiral, it could be a dangerous descent. My other comment is, frankly, I'd like to see 3 ways of getting up there from the waterfront. I'd like to see a ramp, I'd like to see an elevator, and stairs for those of us who like to take the stairs as a way to meet our fitness routines. And, you know, sometimes people would rather not take an elevator. So I'd like to see all of those.
Thanks, Peter. And it looks like we have Walter here.
Hi, another thing that we're hearing from the bike community as well is a lot of active transportation trips use a combination of bikes and light rail. Like, for instance, they'll ride their bike to a light rail station, take it into town, and then and there's a special rack on the light rails and BRT buses just to do this, take their bike off and do the last quarter mile on their bike again. Those mixed mode trips are actually pretty important for really breaking people's ability to only use the car to get around. And in the same route as these long looping ramps happen, the light rail stations on both the Vancouver shoreline and Hayden Island are disconnected entirely from the multi-use path. So you'll have to come down off the looping ramps, walk on the ground, and go up an elevator or staircase to the light rail station to utilize them. So we'll be proposing in our comments that we figure out how to connect those 2 modes together, because in the user realm, they are connected. In the IBR realm, they're totally separate silos that don't interface with each other at all. One other way that works too, like let's say you're on the multi-use path and you get a flat tire, and now you're gonna have to walk your bike home instead of ride your bike home. It'd be nice to be able to pop on the light rail station or pop on one of the transit areas. And the connectivity between the two modes is really, really poor. And the last comment on that too is it would be nice if the multi-use path didn't end at the shoreline, but if there was a way to connect the multi-use path up to the central Vancouver transit hub, which is where BRT and light rail and everything come together. So, you know, that's the thing that we hear probably the most is the multi-use path connections on each end of the main bridge, you know, really need a better arrangement and layout than the current plans.
You know, seeing lots of head nods to that. Mayor Ann, followed by Farley.
And that's where I was going, because I was wondering, are we now up to 3 elevators? 2 in Vancouver, 1 on Hayden Island. 2 for bike, 1 for light rail on our side, 3 elevators. I don't have any problems with the IBR building it. It's who's going to maintain it. Keep it clean, keep it safe. That is something that it's never the construction cost that bothers me. It's always the M&L.
I think.
Holly, would you mind if we did Farley?
Yep,
If you could put your
I'll think
finger
about
up. Thank you.
And yeah, to kind of echo what Walter and Peter were mentioning with the 3 different modes and the connectivity, I think there's maybe, or three access points. I think there's maybe a 4th as well to consider, and that would be a more indirect route. So the Helix right now is the most direct route. There's lots of problems with that. If there's an indirect route that has destinations along it, and it's more of an experiential route that connects maybe to the Northern Transit Station or other areas, and it feels more intentional and less of a point A to point B, but hey, we're gonna learn about the waterfront, we're gonna learn about the mountains, we're gonna learn about the region along the way, and it's more of a gradual, sloping, pedestrian, bike-friendly. I go to design solutions, which I realize is not what we're doing right now, but I think we need to tackle this from a lot of different directions. And it's not just the point A to point B, which is I think what the guys online were mentioning.
I also will just say, I'm hearing take out the word potentially as well, that y'all are like, no, don't potentially include an elevator, include these. So we'll pull that out for you too. Other thoughts?
If I could, so I definitely appreciate the different comments around the connectivity, and I'd wonder if folks have any ideas on how we maybe want to adapt our language here for you know, how we kind of make those points, or we include that in our recommendation here.
Do you mind if we do Carly, Jamie, and then Farley?
So Carly, just a little bit of a response to that. So this is an interesting, like, there's a few different hyper-specific locational references here. And so this is about that sort of waterfront Terminal 1 space. And then lower down, you do have the sort of trail-to-trail connectivity that's highlighted. And so I don't know whether or not there's sort of a bucket category of saying, like, consider over river trail connectivity and accessibility, you kind of broadly, and then there's sort of this drop down list of, you know, tight space at the waterfront, whether or not there are gradual opportunities, and the idea of like sort of just, you know, noting trail to trail connections are relevant, trail to destination connectivity generally, sort of this general destination activity type of thing, whether or not there's sort of a bucket, and then you sort of have these like examples of places where it's of note or concern, because they're a little bit smattered across here right now, and there may be a way to kind of pull them together and reference the concept and then have the examples as sort of bullet items maybe.
We do have a comment virtually in the room, and I know we have quite a few folks in person who have comments, so I'm going to turn it over to the virtual room for a moment, just so they've got an opportunity, and then we'll go to Jamie. Farley, did you still want to make a comment?
No, I think Carly.
Okay, great, and then we'll go to Corky after that.
Okay, great. Shavana?
Hey, good morning. I couldn't quite hear who that was that just made that comment about all of the different access points, but I really want to second that and really appreciate, I think it's come up in this room before. Terminal 1 it's beautiful. It's going to be phenomenal. The city obviously has done so much work to make the waterfront just a really exciting space. And it's not welcoming to a lot of people. And there's a lot of folks in our community who, if access to the bridge is only available, if accessible access to the bridge for multimodal use is only available at one point, it's going to limit the use by folks from different parts of our community. So I really appreciate. I saw later down in the list comments about other access points, and I think we really need to be thinking about, as we're designing, continuing to ensure that who's using bikes, how do we get bike more accessible to people from different parts of the city? How do we get light rail more accessible to different people in different parts of the community? We can't only be looking at how folks who congregate on the east side of I-205, the east side of I-5 are going to be accessing the bridge. We also have to be thinking about how are folks in the Fourth Lane corridor, how are folks, down by Fort Vancouver, how are those folks getting to the bridge and using it, and how are we supporting them in using modes other than single user vehicles to access the bridge. So appreciate the comment that was just made and added my thoughts too.
We'll move back to the room. So Janie, followed by Corky.
So just noting that if we do expand 19 to include the Oregon side as well, that potential funding sources could include Oregon trails as well.
Corky?
I'm trying to figure out how to make this point about making it intuitive for both bicyclists and pedestrians for all the trail connections. I think that's truly important. I don't know if it goes into MA 24, maybe just adding in, make those trail connections intuitive for bicyclists and pedestrians. I know we're not in the design phase, we're trying not to wordsmith, but that might.
You can wordsmith this section. We're done voting for the day. Wordsmith away.
So that would be my suggestion there I think it goes in 24. And then similarly, to ensure that there's easy bike transit connections too, because that was another very good point. I would even, better than design, I would even suggest, as we did with CRC, it's like, let's do a transit stop at the top of the bridge, let people get off and have a cup of coffee, have a little coffee. You can do some really cool stuff, but the main thing there is to ensure easy or natural bike transit connections. I'm not sure where that one would go.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking for clarity on MA 26. I'm not sure that it belongs to MA 26. Is there specificity on protective features around noise and sound anywhere in the design features, or?
I do have some additional context for that one, but I think if we could please come back to that when we go to that discussion, if we could wrap up 19 before we move on, that would be really great.
In that case then, unless we have any other comments for MA 19, let's move into the next benefit.
Okay, great.
So Emily, I'm gonna actually recommend that you go from MA 19, then to MA 24, and then to MA 26, because I'm hearing that these are interrelated and we may bucket these under a broader heading.
That sounds great. Yes, absolutely. Okay, so MA 24, enhance bike trail connectivity to the 40-mile loop and existing trails at North Portland Marine Drive interchange. So some notes that I have here from our technical teams is that part of the 40-mile loop trail runs through the program area and is included in the SEIS study area. The MLPA does include connectivity to existing and planned active transportation systems throughout the program area. And with that, I will open it up for discussion.
And that's where I've captured Corky or make the kind of intuitive piece in there.
As usual, I jumped ahead, sorry about that.
You're fine.
Can we just clarify what the 40-mile loop trail is? I don't know what that is. I have a guess, but I don't know.
Yes. Greg, do you have that or?
I think Walter.
I was like, I'd heard Walter say that as part of his intro, so Walter, go for it.
Hi, the 40-mile loop is a large trail loop that runs entirely through Multnomah County. It's approximately 140 miles long now, though it was originally conceptualized as a 40-mile loop closer in. It was originally designed by the Olmsted brothers when they did their 1905 Portland Parks plan. They're the people that designed Central Park, and they came to Portland to offer some selections. They're the same architects that came up with Saving Forest Park, for instance, the Williger Walkway, Penciler Park. They're pretty incredible architects in their era. So they proposed the 40-mile loop. That was re-energized in 1983 with a master plan that made it go all the way across Marine Drive, through Forest Park, up the Springwater Corridor, and looping around Troutdale in general is sort of the big route. It's been expanded because now there's slow and fast ways to do the route, walking and biking ways to do the route. So it's quite a braid of routes right now. All along the shoreline of where the IBR is, up where the airport is, most people know about the trail there, the Broughton Beach Trail. That's the 40-mile loop. Every part of the 40-mile loop has more than one name for each of the trail segments. But as you get closer to 33rd, it just sort of falls off because it's not been completed. So now during the next period, when they're going to raise the levees up, the 40-mile loop trail is going to be completed from about 33rd to Bridgeton Road, and then across the top of the levee there up to the IBR. The IBR is going to add a segment that crosses underneath the bridges and the local bridge, and then connects to the Marine Drive Trail, which runs all the way out to Kelly Point Park. And that part of the trail is already built too. So the IBR is doing actually something pretty helpful to the 40-mile loop, in that one of the pieces that we've been unable to get an easement for is right next to where the current harbor bridges land, because the 40-mile loop requires voluntary property acquisitions and no takings of property involuntarily. So because the IBR is going to have some property to land the new bridges on and widen what's in public ownership, they're just coincidentally having to take out one of the main property owners who's been thwarting our ability to get passage through there. So they're going to add a pretty important segment from, let's say, Expo, just underneath the bridges, underneath the local harbor bridge, and pop out towards what we call the Bridgeton Trail. So that part's really great that they're doing. Now, how that little east-west corridor connects to the multi-use path that goes over the bridges north and south, it does connect, and they've made some connections, but they're sort of the type of connections that loop around and do, ODOT ways of highway ways of connecting trails rather than direct ways. So even though
Walter,
there is,
Walter, thank you so much.
Oh,
That
okay.
was really,
so that's a long answer, but
no, it was fantastic. Thank you. I'm seeing a lot of folks where that was really helpful. I know that we only have until 11:25, so I just want to make sure, because it sounds like this is a topic we're all really feeling passionate about. So let's make sure we get to some of those comments. So I'm seeing a placard up from Holly.
Just some, given the discussion, some proposed language on this could be enhanced multimodal trail connectivity to the 40-mile loop, Vancouver Waterfront Trail, existing trails at the North Portland Marine Drive interchange, and other existing multimodal trails, something to that effect. Just put everything in one bucket. I don't know.
I want to say something I really appreciate Holly is giving language for us to include. So that's definitely the stage that we're at. Let's wordsmith away. So if you have other thoughts on language, let's add it in.
And Bree, really quickly, if I can just note before we go to the next comment that this is not our only shot at this this tranche. We will bring it back to the meeting next month, so we will have plenty of time to dig into all the rest of these. Just wanted to note that for the group.
Thank you, Emily. Okay, going to Priya.
A quick one on number 26. Incorporating protective features with the design such as railing or safety nets. We have one additional recommendations for including weather protection.
Okay, can you say that to me just one more time?
Number 26, including, we have protective features like railing or safety nets in MA 26. So the suggested addition is weather protection.
Perfect, thank you. So adding weather protection.
And Bree, if I can note, I definitely appreciate that. We will note that for 26. I want to see if there are any other thoughts on 24, because I do have some notes from our tech team for 26, and I want to make sure I'm able to share that before we dig more into that one.
Thank you for that. Any other comments on MA 24 then before we move on? I'm seeing a comment from Farley.
Yeah, I think to Carly's point earlier, keeping our language, it's helpful to list the specific things we care about, and I also don't want to limit us either. So I think recognizing that there's like a regional network and then there's specific points within that network, but what we list is not the only things that are critical, because I think the design team's going to uncover more.
Yes.
And we're not experts. Walter might be, but we're not experts.
Anything else for MA 24 before we move on to MA 26? All right. Moving on to MA 26.
All right, thank you. And just want to note, we may run out of time on this one, but we'll get it started. So MA 26, enhance safety for bicyclists and pedestrians crossing the bridge by incorporating protective features into the design, such as railing or safety nets. So some notes that I wanted to share from our technical teams were that considerations of safety for this aspect standard practice. The MLPA will include features that optimize experience, safety, and comfort, as well as directness. So from what our earlier conversations were around this one, it was really focused on safety and considerations for fall risks. And so from what I recall from some of our small group discussions, there was some mention about the specific design of the railings and gaps there, and if folks don't want their bicycle handles to get caught in a gap in the rail and somebody falls. So that was some of the considerations that were around this discussion. Another note is that our tech teams did note that safety nets are typically not feasible, just given various considerations. So that's a piece where maybe we can consider amending language or looking at some other alternatives. That I know that in the discussion around this, nets were mentioned as an example of from the Golden Gate Bridge, but that particular bridge is very unique and has kind of a specific risk and history there. So we just wanted to note that. And with that, we can open it up.
And we had one comment that we'll add already about weather protection, and then Jeannie.
If I can ask a question.
Yeah.
What do you mean by weather protection?
Yeah. I think that just understanding that rain and ice and sleetness can kind of be dangerous for those on the main span. So if there's a way to protect that or from extreme heat, so kind of just the safety of those on the main span travel.
So if this is a single level span, you guys are looking for canopy over the bike trail?
Or maybe places where people can take breaks if they are biking across and they need to like find a moment of shade, something that kind of allows people to take respite.
Okay, understood.
And I just want to note on that one, on MA 23 does speak a bit to that one as far as the needs around shade and some of those amenities or restrooms, things like that.
All right, we'll go to Jeannie, followed by Corky.
So for this one, My key thoughts are in regards to suicide prevention. We've had 2 teenagers in the last about 2 months that have disappeared, last seen on the 205 bridge. So for me, that's really high on my thoughts right now, if there's a way that we can do that going forward to prevent further suicides.
Corky?
I think we already have concerns for sound for bicycle path already in here. I think I just didn't see it, so want to make sure that's included.
Yes, we do. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Carly?
Yeah, I guess similarly to other comments, I think this specific design solutions are maybe not what we want to list here, like railings and safety nets. That's less helpful for a design team, I would imagine, versus talking about weather protection, safety, comfort. I think also lighting is a key consideration, as well as eyes on the street. And I don't know the specific standard. I'm assuming there's a standard out there though for what is used to interpret safety for pedestrians walking through public areas. I don't know what that is, but I would follow those recommendations.
Got a couple more minutes. Any other thoughts on MA 26?
I will just say for the group, because I whispered it to Holly, but we'll change any place that it just says pedestrians or just says bicyclists, we'll change to multimodal users, because we heard that in one, we'll make that across the board.
This is more broad, but I just want to bring it up. I've recently been commuting to Portland more frequently, taking the bus, and Amtrak has crossed my mind. And it's underutilized mode of transportation between the 2 cities. And I haven't heard any discussion about it related to the IPR, and I'm just curious. This is going to be my public comments. But I'm just curious if Amtrak has come into play at all. That could be a bike destination or multimodal destination. It takes 20 minutes right now. You completely bypass traffic and it costs $8. So it's cheaper than parking in Portland. So just wanted to put that out there to the group as part of our mobility and accessibility discussion. If there's ways to work with the rail to improve mobility using existing infrastructure.
Steve wants a pet nods on that one as well. Mary Ann?
Harley, I would absolutely love that, but BNSF controls the line and Amtrak is never reliable.
Yeah. I'm curious, I don't know that much about how Seattle figured that out with their sounder train. It seems like other jurisdictions so different,
The shared track is a challenge.
Yeah.
2 state DOTs do support, sort of additional service, but negotiating additional space on the rails is incredibly complicated.
Yeah, I've heard that before. I just wanted to bring it to the discussion again.
Janie?
So, and I don't know which one this would necessarily relate to, but I took a CRESA emergency preparedness class last night, which now has me all thinking about evacuation. And they talked about at the I-5 bridge, anything happened with that, it's going down. So 205 would become a pedestrian bridge or a footbridge during an emergency. People were talking about swimming across the river if they had to get to Portland. So just kind of keeping that in our mind when we build this bridge too, if there is an emergency, what would that look like with regards to mobility and accessibility? Would it be carts? Would it be pedestrian? I don't know, just kind of throwing that out there, not sure which one it would fall under.
Yeah, I'd also like to add to 26, I don't know if we have captured this before, but we're talking about safety, potential suicide, as well as, somebody just, something happening bad, right, on the multi-use path. Have we looked at call boxes as well? I know TriMet has looked at call boxes on certain stations, but if somebody is thinking about suicide or somebody runs into has a medical issue on that multi-use path, we can call boxes.
Jane, did you put your card back up or?
Oh, sorry, no.
No problem, just wanted to double check. Emily, go for it.
Yeah, and I just wanted to loop back on a previous comment around the lighting and just note that we, in our way back in our tranche 1 recommendations that we voted on, we do have one that explicitly talks about making sure that there's considerations for lighting and safety on multi-use paths. So just wanted to circle back and let y'all know that we have that covered.
Any other comments on MA 26 before we transition into our closing? Right. Seeing none, then we are going to move into the final part of our agenda. Can I get the final slides, please? Thank you, everyone. That was a really great conversation. Excited to continue it for next month. While we wait on those slides, what we'll do is we'll go through the remaining meetings that we have this month, and then I will have Administrator Johnson close for us. So next slide, please. Okay, so coming up, we have a couple exciting conversations. So December 19th, we are going to be back at the Portland building. And we're going to be discussing mobility, accessibility, and physical design. So continuing this conversation, Emily?
Yes, I just wanted to note for this that our schedule here, it all kind of depends on how quickly we're able to move through things. So I just wanted to note that. So we will be adapting to what we're able to get through as a group. So we'll continue tranche 3 in our next one. And then everything will kind of move from there. So whether decision making is able to happen in that meeting or we need to move it to the next, we will adjust the subsequent topics based on that.
Thank you, Emily. So with that caveat in mind, we do have tentatively scheduled for January, February, and March to review mobility, accessibility, physical design, and community benefits, and review and refine tranche 4. But recognizing, of course, that we can take time as we need to. All right, moving to our next slide. Upcoming program meetings, Bi-State Tolling Subcommittee is meeting tomorrow from 1 to 3 p.m. We have the CAG, I believe, also meeting tonight, but we'll be meeting December 12th from 4 to 6 p.m. We have an Equity Advisory Group December 16th from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. And of course, our next CBAG meeting, as we mentioned, December 19th, 9:30 to 11:30 a.m. in Portland. Next slide, please. All right, and I'm going to pass it to Administrator Johnson for closing remarks.
Once again, I want to thank everybody for bringing the energy and the thoughts and ideas to the table. This is a tremendously energized group with a lot of great ideas. So a lot of these things that we're talking about will become clearer as we get into more final design. And one of the things that I'm confident of is a collaboration, continued collaboration between our designers, groups like this, groups like the non-motorized committee in both on both sides of the river. So let's keep the ideas flowing, and no idea is out of bounds, and we will continue to listen well. So thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.